In the search for Kaitlin Armstrong, agents are using a multidisciplinary approach to catch the fugitive. Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. After 6 weeks on the run, are US Marshals any closer to finding her? It would seem like they aren't, but a ploy law enforcement often uses to say little while doing a lot. This can give a fugitive a false sense of security. That being said, Kaitlin Armstrong is no slouch. So what tools might law enforcement be using to find her? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So in terms of tools, what kind of tools could be used? Well, number one, social media. Did you know that US Marshals were in direct contact with Kaitlin's sister, that's Kaitlin Armstrong, earlier this month? According to Fox News, quote, the camper confirmed not only that Armstrong's sister Christine lived there, that's at the Haven, but also that agents with the Marshal Service had been there to speak with the sister, end quote. It's also likely they're in indirect contact with Christine as well by monitoring Kaitlin Armstrong's social media. Thus far, Kaitlin's sister's social media is still active. Caitlin's boyfriend, and I guess it's ex-boyfriend, Colin Strickland, his social media has also remained static but accessible since the incident. Could they be in contact, or agents of theirs, could friends of theirs be in contact indirectly on these platforms? That brings us to the second tool, bank records. Kaitlin has substantial assets in Austin, cumulatively possibly over $2 million worth. It seems unlikely she'd simply abandon those assets. It seems unlikely she'd simply turn her back on them. Well, would you? Besides this, many of her assets are co-owned by Colin Strickland. Will she make contact with him? And if she does, will Colin help her, help law enforcement, or help himself? Besides bank records, there are potentially other records law enforcement could keep an eye on, such as driver's license applications and airline manifests for Newark and LaGuardia. That brings us to the third tool, facial recognition. Now, the digital tool may be more useful than actually trying to recognize Kaitlin on site. She's likely cut her hair and dyed it and may already be living under an assumed identity. The consensus seems to be that she's still in the US. Of course, if she participates in social media, facial recognition could possibly be used there, though I'm not quite sure what privacy legislation would say about that. I don't know what the reach is of US Marshals within those applications. That brings us to the fourth tool, boots on the ground. Having actual officers walking around, combing some of the terrain between the Haven campsite and I guess on the Haven campsite, as well as the Canadian border area, that is possibly a way to go about things, as well as alerting their Canadian counterparts, which they obviously have done. And that brings us to the fifth and final tool, following up leads. Kaitlin last popped up on the radar at Newark Liberty International Airport. Is it possible to pick up a CCTV trail from there? And have law enforcement done so? And they're keeping that trail to themselves. Also, is Kaitlin using a vehicle? If so, what vehicle? So I'm going to take it a little bit further than that for a change. 4 days ago, a new federal warrant was released for Kaitlin Armstrong. No real fireworks here, and not much we didn't already know. But what does stand out is that Kaitlin previously expressed the desire to kill Mo. She actually audibly, orally spoke the words, and she said so in January. About 4 months later, she actually did exactly what she said she was going to do. And the other thing that's quite interesting is that the murder weapon was actually recovered from the residence she shared with Colin, perhaps trying to frame him. As I've said before, it makes no sense to take the weapon to the airport. There was almost no way she'd be able to board an airline with it. An extract from the new affidavit reads, on the date of the murder, Armstrong owned a pistol that APD, that's Austin Police Department officers, seized from Armstrong's residence in the course of the investigation. Laboratory test firing of Armstrong's pistol confirmed that it fired the spent shell casings that the Austin Police Department found at the scene of the crime. This is actually not the first time this has been reported. The affidavit goes on to say, on or about May 12, 2022, Austin Police Department officers investigating the crime questioned Armstrong regarding her knowledge of the events. From the officers' questioning, Armstrong knew that the Austin Police Department had evidence of a vehicle being near the scene on May 11, 2022. Armstrong likely concluded from the Austin Police Department interview that she was suspected of murder. A person close to Armstrong has reported not seeing or hearing from Armstrong again after May 13, 2022. I wonder who that person is. Is it Colin? Armstrong's social media accounts, including Instagram, have been shut down or have not been updated since the murder occurred. The account where they say has not been updated, I guess, is LinkedIn. After the interview on May 12, 2022, Armstrong was free to leave, and investigators have discovered video images showing Armstrong at the Austin Bergstrom International Airport on May 14, 2022. Airline records reveal that Armstrong boarded Southwest Airlines flight WN2262 from Austin to Houston, and in Houston she connected to flight WN30 to New York LaGuardia. Investigators have conducted a diligent search for Armstrong at known locations, but have been unable to locate her to execute the arrest warrant in case number DIDC 223-01129. This warrant remains unexecuted, and Armstrong's whereabouts are currently unknown. So I think the other thing that stands out in the current news about Kaitlin Armstrong is that they have basically confirmed that Kaitlin is still alive. And one's got to ask, how do they know that? You know, it's obviously not a situation like with Brian Laundrie, that you're looking for someone and actually they're not moving around and there's no intrigue, right? And so one law enforcement expert has been speculating that possibly they intercepted something. It could have been a communication or conversation, or somebody saw her, and they're actually keeping that information close to their chests. Well, one thing we don't know for sure is Kaitlin in America, or has she left America? Thus far, it looks like she's stateside, but as I mentioned earlier, there's a heck of a lot of international travel on her sister's Instagram that includes Kaitlin as well, where Kaitlin also traveled internationally. So as of right now, Kaitlin has been on the run for 6 weeks. How much longer will she continue to evade authorities? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.